everyone, welcome to Paint Pouring with Ron. In today's video we're going to have a look at paints and pouring mediums and the other bits and pieces you'll find handy to have when you're using them. If you like what you see today, please press the like button, and if you'd like to see more, please take a moment to subscribe. Thanks. Now, paints are easily the most expensive part of this whole paint pouring process. And if you're not careful, you can become a paint collector and bankrupt yourself. So you're standing in the art shop and you're wondering, what paints do you buy to do paint pouring with? Now, you'll be dictated to by a couple of things: the price and the quality. So you can buy what you can afford, and you want a reasonable quality, so you're going to get good results from your painting. Now, if you're made of money, you could buy the professional artist quality paints. They are really wonderful. They work superbly well and give great results, but they're expensive. On the other hand, I probably wouldn't go for the cheap poster paints from the cheap shop, because you're definitely going to get what you pay for. They may look all right in the bottle, but you'll find your painting just really doesn't work out, nor will it stand the test of time hanging on the wall in your house. So, like with most things, sticking to the middle ground is often a good way to go. Now, what brands do I use? Well, I particularly like the Montmart paints at the moment, for a couple of reasons. They're affordable. A 2-litre bottle like this is only about $29 from my art shop, and it goes a really long way. Again, I look for quality. The quality is pretty good. The pigment load is quite high, so your painting is going to look nice when it's done. And they're nice and thick and creamy, which gives you lots of options when you're mixing in pouring mediums and things to get the consistency that you like. So I really like those ones. They're available in lots of colours. Now, don't be tempted to buy every colour that's there. You don't need to at the beginning. A good place to start is to purchase just the primary colours, so your red, yellow, blue, white and black, lots of that because you use a lot of it. And perhaps you might buy some like dark brown, like burnt umber, that sort of thing, to give you the earthy sorts of colours. Good place to start. So I love using those. I also like this brand, Eraldo paints. They come in lots and lots of different colours. I particularly like their metallic colours. They've got lots of those. Now, they are more expensive than the Montmart ones. A 500ml jar like this sets you back about $19. However, the shop I get them from, Riot Art, they often have a 50% off sale, which is great. I stock up then whenever they're on sale. Now, you might also come across this brand, Chroma A2 Heavy Body Acrylics. I started off using those, and yeah, they work really well, particularly with Floetrol. Not so much with glue and water, but I think that the Montmart paints are better. So as I'm using these up, I'm going over to the Montmart paints. Another brand that I sometimes use is the Jo Sonja's paints. They're quite expensive and they're pretty thin as well, but they're great to use if you're doing paintings that need a thinner mix, like a Dutch pour or even a bloom pour. They look great and they go a long way in paintings like that. So I've got some of those in my collection. Then I really love the Deco Art Extreme Sheen metallic paints. They're really good to use in things like swipes and blooms. They give a great effect. So as you can see, I've got lots of those on my shelf. And then I also bought a couple of jars of Deco Art Satin Enamel paints. They're good to use for cloud pours. They give a really nice effect there. Now, paints you can't really use on their own unless they're exactly the right consistency ready for pouring. I tend to avoid the bottles that are sold as ready to pour paints. You're sort of limited to what they give you, and sometimes they're not quite right for the sort of project you've got in mind. So I prefer mixing my own paints. I've got a lot more control then over what I'm getting. Now, there are a number of products you can use to mix with your acrylic paints to get the right consistency for painting. You can use the professional pouring mediums. They work great. They give great effects and a great finish, but they're really expensive. I can't afford them. So again, I go for the cheaper alternatives that work almost as well, really, I think. A lot of people go for Floetrol. Floetrol you can get from your local hardware store. I can get mine in 1 litre bottles or 4 litre bottles. 4 litres is much cheaper, of course, than the 1 litre. And you go through a lot. So buy the big bottle. It is a paint extender, not really a pouring medium. Painters use it to thin out their paints. You can use it to thin out your pouring colours. It works really well. I like to use it on most of my paintings, except when I want really nice looking cells. I find that the glue mix works better for that. It is really reactive though. I think the Australian Floetrol has an oil of some sort mixed in it, which gives you cells even without using any silicone or anything like that. I do use silicone as well, but I tend to limit it to only a little bit. Otherwise, I go cell crazy and my painting is just covered in millions of cells, which is fine if you want that look, but often you don't. So Floetrol is great. I use that a lot. Now the glue mix, a lot of people go to the expense of importing Elmer's glue all from the States. It works really well, but it's expensive once you add shipping costs. Sometimes Amazon has a special deal on. I managed to get 2 bottles for the price of 1 at one stage plus free shipping, so I grabbed 2 bottles. When I'm through this lot, I think I'll try to get a good quality PVA glue from the hardware store and give that a go and see if that works. Don't see why not. Worth a go. I don't use it straight from the bottle. It's too thick. I mix it with water, usually about 60 to 40% glue and water. So I have an old water bottle like this. I just pour 600 mils of glue in here, 400 mils of water, swish it around, and then it's ready to use as my pouring medium. Works really well. Now some of you may wonder, why don't you use just plain water to thin out your paint? Well, some artists do. I only use water when I do a Dutch pour and I need a really, really thin mix. It works well. But for other pours, I tend to avoid using water as much as possible. A little bit is fine, but any more than 30% water in your glue and you're going to risk breaking the bonds in the paint. And it's just not going to turn out when you pour it onto the canvas. So using something like Floetrol or a glue and water mix is a much better way to go. Now when you're mixing your paints together, consistency is the most important. People often ask, oh, well, how much paint do you mix with the water? What's the ratio? Well, it really depends on the thickness of your paint to begin with and the sort of pour that you're wanting to do. If you're doing a flip cut pour, you want your consistency to be like the warm honey, a reasonably thick mixture. If you're doing a ring pour, you want it a bit thicker. If you're doing a Dutch pour, you want your mix to be really thin. So it really depends, and you'll need to experiment a little bit with what paints you have and what technique you're going to do to see what works best for you. So consistency, not amounts, is the most important, and you should really keep the consistency of your paints the same across all the colours if you can. Now, not all the colours of each brand are the same. I find some colours in the Montmart range are really thin, and some, like the burnt umber, are really, really thick. So I need more pouring medium with my really thick colour and less with the really thin colour. But I usually start out with the Montmart paints, 1-to-1 ratio of paint to pouring medium, and then I can always add more if I need to. If it's too thin, I can put a little bit more paint in there to thicken it up a bit. Now I thought I'd show you a little bit of a pre-mixed paint I have here already, just to give you an idea of the consistency. It's a little bit like warm honey. You can see like it leaves sort of a little mound on a mound in the cup, and if I turn the spoon to leave a trail, the trail lasts there for about 3 seconds or so. So that's the sort of consistency that you need if you're doing something like a dirty cup pour or a flip cup pour. The ring pour I do probably a bit thicker, and the Dutch pour I would do really, really thin. No mound at all and no trail at all when I move the spoon around. Now, you can get various effects in your painting. You've heard people talk about cells. Now, you can get cells naturally if you use your Floetrol and paint mix, but I tend to use silicone oil in mine. Now, this is the brand I use, the Montmart silicone oil. I find it works really well. On a cup of this size, it's about 150 mils, I might put 2 or 3 drops of silicone oil in there. Less if I'm using Floetrol, maybe only 1 or 2 drops of silicone oil. A lot of people also use this product called coconut milk. Now, the coconut's not the most important part of the mix. It smells nice, but you're wanting one that's the main ingredient is dimethicone. You can buy straight dimethicone as well, but this works just as well, and a lot of people prefer using this over the silicone. I haven't really experimented much with this yet. I've been mainly using the silicone. Okay, so you've got your paints done. Now, what other things do you need if you're going to start throwing it all over the canvas? Well, you might have noticed these sitting on my desk in previous videos. These are sort of puppy toilet training pads that I got from the cheap shop. This is what the bag looks like. Lots of different brands. So there's puppy training pads. They're a great size, and they're great to use to protect the surface of your plastic tabletop and to make cleaning up really easy. When you're done, you can just fold them up and throw them away. When they come out of the bag, they just look like that. You can just unfold them and they're ready to use. They're really excellent. Not terribly environmentally friendly, but I like them. They're worth it. Now, some other things you're going to find useful is to mix your paint in the cup with. You could use craft sticks. I just bought mine from the hardware store. Cheap shops sell them in their craft sections. They also sell thicker ones if you prefer using thicker ones. They're good to use and you can just throw them away when you're done. Or I personally like using just plastic spoons. They work fabulously well. Sometimes if your paint is really thick and you're mixing, you might just get a stick and scrape off paint that's stuck to the spoon. Otherwise, the spoons work great, and I just wash them up afterwards and reuse them again next time. They're really good. Now, sometimes you're going to have, the cups. These are really important. I use plastic cups, but don't buy the really, really cheap, flimsy plastic cups. They're fine for mixing paints in, but if you're going to want to tip your cup upside down on the canvas, they're going to crumple up on you and you're going to get paint everywhere. So I tend to buy the much thicker cups. My local Spotlight store has these. big party pack. They're often on sale. I find they work really well. I also get the bigger plastic cups when I'm using a larger canvas. Again, they're quite sturdy and they're easy to wash up afterwards. Now, washing up, may as well talk about that as well. When you've used the cup, I usually have a bucket of water next to my table and I just drop any spoons and cups in there and I can wash them up at my leisure. Now, don't be tempted and wash them up in your laundry in the sink. Eventually the paint is going to clog up your sink. Rather, use the outside tap on the lawn. That way you're not going to clog up any pipes anywhere. So that's the cups. Now you're often going to have some paint left over, or you might be doing a painting technique where you want to be a bit precise in how your paint is going to go on the canvas. And a cup can be a little bit tricky. To do that, you can use squeeze bottles. Again, I bought these from the crafts section of my cheap shop. You can get them online with Amazon as well, but I find the craft shop ones are a lot cheaper than Amazon. They come in lots of sizes. This is a good size. I find this size pretty good also, especially if I'm mixing up these metallic extreme sheens. They last for a really long time in those bottles, and you can just squeeze them out precisely on your canvas where you want them. As you can see, I've got lots of bottles sitting behind me. They're all pre-mixed paints, they last forever. I just give them a bit of a shake when I want to use them again. Now, other things that you might find useful. When you're measuring out your paint, it's a good idea, rather than using your eyes, is to have a pair of digital scales. I got them from a kitchen shop. The digital scales are great. I put them inside a plastic bag, and that way when the bag gets dirty I can just replace it with a new one and it protects the scales inside. They work great. Then these tools are also handy. A couple of different size and types of palette knives are really great to have. I've got a really big one. It's good for spreading paint out on a large canvas. A smaller one for smaller canvases. And then this particular one I often use for scraping around the edges of my canvas to get the drops off when I'm done. Now this here is a wall scraper that painters use, a metal wall scraper. I use this if I want to tip a cup of paint upside down on my canvas. Now some people flip them over really quick and drop them on the canvas. I don't really like doing that because I'm afraid I'm going to throw paint all over the place. All I do, I'll demo on an empty one, all I do is put this over top of my cup, pour it upside down, and then I can just slide it onto my canvas. And I don't lose any paint anywhere, and I can get the cup exactly where I want it. It's an excellent tool. Now, what else? Sometimes you're going to want to blow the paint around on your canvas, especially if you're doing a Dutch pour or you're just being creative. Now, you could use your mouth. That works really well. Be careful that you might dangle your hair in the paint or your clothes. I've dangled my clothes in the paint lots of times. Right, a useful tool that's cheap is just a plastic straw. I get the bendy ones, and I can be really, really precise where I blow on my canvas. That works well. Also, I found this little mini blower in my local hi-fi shop, for all things. I think it's a computer accessory to blow out dust from keyboards. Amazon sell these as well. They're called mini blowers. They work really, really well. They're small, but they've got a bit of a puff on them. They work super well. And if you want to blow paint around on a much bigger area, of course you've got your trusty hairdryer. This attachment is quite good. When I use it though, I use the cool air button on the blow dryer, otherwise the hot air is going to do interesting things to your paint. Then you're going to also want to invest in a heat gun of some variety. Now you can get heat guns from your local kitchen shop. They work well. I just went to my local hardware store and got a heat gun there from their tools section. Normally they just sell this part and then the cans of butane gas separately. And all you need to do is screw the can onto the bottom and you are ready to go. Works really well. I use it to get rid of air bubbles on my paintings with, and to encourage cells to pop up once I've put the paint on the canvas. You'll see me using this in plenty of videos, I'm sure. Then we've also got rubber gloves, really good for protecting your hands and saving a messy cleanup afterwards. Essential tool there. Paper towels, you'll use lots of them, they're great. And just cleaning wipe cloths to help clean up afterwards. They're really super awesome as well. And lastly, I think I've covered everything, I hope. Just some things to measure with. So a funnel is often useful, especially if I'm pouring some glue into the bottle. Funnel is really great. Or a measuring jug of some description with straight sides. Really good for pouring paint out onto a canvas if you're doing a large ring pour. Great for measuring your paint and glue mix. Oh, not your paint and glue mix, your water and glue mix as well. Okay, so that's quite a bit I've gone through today. I really hope I've covered everything essential. If you have any questions, please pop a message in the comments section and I'll answer that as best as I can. But all the things I showed you today are really good things to have on hand when you're first starting up with paint pouring. You'll see me use all of those more in forthcoming videos when we actually get to painting something, and you'll see how everything works together. So I hope you found this video really helpful and you've learned some tips and tricks that you can keep in mind when you're getting ready to do some paint pourings. So until next time.